Base set cards were released in January 1999 and feature the first appearance of Kanto's most famous Pokémon. But how are they doing in 2025? In this video, we count down the 10 base set cards that command the highest market prices and recent sales on eBay and PWCC. Nidoking may not be the most beloved Pokémon overall, but he certainly stirs up a strong sense of nostalgia. Interestingly, Giovanni's Nidoking might actually be more popular among fans today than the original first edition base set version. Looking at market trends, PSA 10 Nidoking peaked in value during the Logan Paul and COVID-era Pokémon boom. Since then, its price has steadily declined, with a recent eBay sale landing at around $7,500. In terms of rarity, only 91 copies have earned a PSA 10 grade. That's just over 4% of all graded first edition Nidoking cards, making it a surprisingly tough gem to find in pristine condition. Mewtwo is arguably one of the most iconic legendary Pokémon, with its original base set artwork illustrated by Ken Sugimori, artist behind multiple Pokémon cards during the early days. And let's be honest, most of us came close to tears during Pokémon the first movie. When it comes to value, PSA 10 Mewtwo cards have been gradually declining since their peak in 2021, with another dip in 2024. However, it went back up in 2025 in a big way. In October 2025, first edition Mewtwo reached a new peak, with one eBay sale reaching astronomical $30,000. As for rarity, only about 3.5% of graded Mewtwo's have received a PSA 10 for the first edition version. Even more impressive, the shadowless PSA 10 population stands at just 75, only 1.3% of all Mewtwo's graded by PSA. The base set Holo Raichu, also illustrated by Ken Sugimori, is another nostalgic classic, and it evolves from none other than the face of the entire franchise, Pikachu. Unfortunately for collectors, the value of a first edition PSA 10 Raichu has dropped by more than 50% since its peak in 2021, and current trends suggest it's not rebounding anytime soon. A first edition PSA 10 Raichu sold on eBay for just under $8,000, reflecting the continued cooling of the vintage card market. When it comes to rarity, Raichu actually holds up quite well. There are 88 copies graded PSA 10, a respectable 3.5% of the total graded population. Magneton hasn't received a ton of attention in recent years, but it still holds a special place as one of the more beloved base set holo cards. This artwork, like many from the set, was illustrated by Ken Sugimori. Though don't worry, we have other artists represented on this list too. Since its peak, Magneton's value held fairly steady until a sharp drop of nearly 50% in November 2023. However, after a series of ups and downs, it now holds a steady value in 2025. First edition PSA 10 Magneton sold on eBay for $8,000. In terms of rarity, Magneton is surprisingly scarce. There are only 185 PSA 10 first edition holo Magneton cards, just 3.3% of the total graded population, making it one of the tougher base set holos to find in pristine condition. Zapdos is one of the original legendary birds and has been a core part of the Pokémon franchise since Generation 1. Once again, the base set artwork was illustrated by Ken Sugimori. Over the years, Zapdos has seen some price corrections, but it's actually held its value better than many expected and is currently on an upward trend. You might be surprised to see it rank this high, but a first edition PSA 10 Zapdos recently sold on PWCC for $8,400, a strong result in the current market. In terms of rarity, there are 135 PSA 10 copies, which makes up about 6% of the total graded population, a relatively high percentage. Hitmonchan is one of the most iconic fighting-type Pokémon from the first generation, perhaps second only to Machoke. The base set version once again features artwork by Ken Sugimori. While Hitmonchan hasn't received much attention in recent card releases, his first edition PSA 10 base set card held steady in value for quite a while. That is, until March 2025, when it experienced a surprising drop in value. A PSA 10th first edition Hitmonchan sold on PWCC for an eye-popping $11,000, a figure that doesn't align with broader price trends, making it a fascinating card to keep an eye on. As for rarity, it's exceptionally scarce. Only 59 copies have earned a PSA 10, which is just 3% of the total graded population. Number 4 might come as a surprise, but Ninetales is a fan favorite, especially within certain communities. Despite not being a starter or a legendary, this Generation 1 Pokémon has continued to receive beautiful new card artwork over the years, which has helped maintain its popularity in terms of value. Ninetales has seen a mild downward trend over the past few years, with a few notable spikes in recent months. Overall, it has held steady in the evolving market. In fact, a first edition PSA 10 recently sold for a staggering $10,000. Rarity-wise, only 68 copies of the first edition base set Ninetales have been graded PSA 10, making up about 3.5% of the total population. A respectable number for a card that's quietly climbed its way into the top tier. Before we move into the top 3, let's take a look at a couple of honorable mentions. First up is the Kanto water starter we all know and love, Blastoise. Surprisingly, you won't find this heavy hitter in the top 3, not because of value, but due to a lack of recent PSA 10 sales. However, a CGC 10 copy did sell on eBay for $6,500, which gives us a good idea of where the market stands. Next, let's talk about something a bit different. Graded first edition base set booster packs. All 3 pack artworks, Charizard, Venusaur, and Blastoise all sold recently on PWCC. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of grading sealed packs, but what do you think? Is it worth the plastic slab, or should packs be opened and enjoyed? If you want to support the channel, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it helps me out massively and lets me keep making videos like this one. Gyarados has been an icon of the Pokémon franchise since Generation 1. And let's be honest, he might be one of the first memes in the series thanks to his humble beginnings as Magikarp. Over the years, Gyarados has continued to receive incredible artwork across multiple sets, keeping his legacy strong in terms of value. Gyarados has remained relatively stable throughout the past year. In fact, a recent eBay sale put a first edition PSA 10 just under the $12,000 mark, and keeps growing to $14,000. When it comes to rarity, the numbers are tight. There are 89 PSA 10 first edition Gyarados cards, which makes up about 4.2% of the total graded population. A solid combination of desirability and scarcity. Now we're into the big 3, and kicking it off is none other than Venusaur, the original grass-type starter and an absolute battle tank. This base set artwork was illustrated by none other than Mitsuhiro Arita, the legendary artist behind some of the most iconic Pokémon cards in history. Despite losing nearly 50% of its value according to price charting, the first edition PSA 10 Venusaur still remains one of the most valuable cards in the base set lineup. A recent eBay sale brought in nearly $13,000, proving it's still a major force in the collector market. As for rarity, there are 144 PSA 10 first edition Venusaur, which is about 4.6% of the graded population, higher than some other cards on this list, but the demand keeps its value strong. Here it is, the one we all knew was coming, the first edition PSA 10 Charizard. This card is the crown jewel of the base set and a true icon in the world of Pokémon collecting. Illustrated by the legendary Mitsuhiro Arita, collectors love getting their base set Charizard signed by this artist. Both raw and graded Charizards consistently command massive prices. While the market has cooled off significantly since the 2021 boom, the demand is still sky high. Since it's such an expensive card, PSA 10 Charizard sales are incredibly rare. PSA 10 Charizard recently sold on eBay for just under $43,000, surprisingly low for a card of this status. In terms of rarity, only 124 copies have been graded PSA 10, and they make up just 2.65% of the total graded population, one of the lowest on this entire list. And that's it, the most expensive first edition PSA 10 base set cards in 2025. What video should I do next? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.